In addition to the fact that divorce it has been disallowed by the Bible, there are other many reasons why you should stay in your marriage and not start living separately, unless what you are risking is death. In that case, obviously, we do not encourage people to commit suicide or to encourage genocide of any sort. But short of anything that would kill you, I would really encourage you to stay with your spouse, however difficult he is. First, of course, because the Bible says so, but more importantly, because there are other social repercussions for a failed marriage. And it affects the couples themselves, it affects the church, it affects the children. It certainly has repercussions, even if you are not to talk about the Bible and just talk about what it means. In fact, I heard somebody say that of all stress levels that have been discussed, there is no higher stress than divorce. That to lead you to depression, lead you to a destroyed future, almost a deformed personality out of the process as you go through the whole process. So you can see clearly it is not the kind of thing you want to run into. You are running away from a problem, you put yourself into a bigger problem. And that's something that you need to think about, even as you think about the issues of divorce. You need to think about, wait, I agree that I'm having challenges here, but what am I getting myself into? I will still remember a lady who told me she divorced before she was a Christian. Now she had become a Christian. Realized that in Christianity, remarriage is not easy. And then tells me she is okay financially. In fact, that's why she removed herself from a marriage, because she had married somebody good for nothing, hardly bring anything. She was the one supporting him. And now he left, and it's now history. And he's saying, wow, I wish I knew what I'm going through in terms of loneliness in my beautiful house alone. I wish I never asked him to leave. I wish the marriage never broke down. I'm too lonely, and yet I brought it on myself because of financial differences, which don't quite should never have brought us to where we leave our marriage just because of a few problems, financial problems. Whereas he was not necessarily a bad man, but he was lazy and not pulling his weight. And so she was saying, I'm telling you this, but I know that you don't have an answer for me. I said, yes, I don't. Because it's for sure, remarriage is not that straightforward. And now he may have gone and even married somebody else himself, and you are the one anyway responsible for the breakage of the marriage. So it has its own challenges that will come with it. So all I'm saying is that you need to evaluate, a proper evaluation, indicating that you are sorting out a problem by divorce. In my vernacular, we say, don't come from the drying place for the firewood into the firewood itself, into the fire itself. You know, the way we built our traditional huts, we would put a place for firewood to dry above the fire. So when you are around the fire, then you put sticks up and place your firewood on top. So as you are warming yourself with this fire, the firewood are drying. Now, when you want to make good fire, you actually get firewood from there now into the real fire. So he says, it's already bad enough to be in the drying place because it means all the heat is reaching you. But it's far much worse to actually now be into the fire and be finally consumed. And that's what we are saying, that sometimes divorce is like moving from the fire drying place, itara, we used to call it in my vernacular, and now you are going into the fire itself, into a life that is more dissatisfied. And so you and then you marry somebody else only to discover that this next person you marry does no longer has the weaknesses of the first one, but now he has his own other weaknesses. You just trade the weaknesses because you did not want to marry somebody who is like having those weaknesses that made you divorce the first guy. But now he has others. That's what human beings are. We all have weaknesses. Depends on which ones. And that's why people are ending up, once you divorce the first time, it becomes easier to divorce the second time. So people who divorce the first time very easily end up being involved in divorce the second, the third, and the fourth time. Because now every time they realize there's something not quite right. And because the Englishman was right when he says practice makes perfect, you now cannot withstand any frustration. You just dump the man or dump the woman. But it all started by that first idea of divorce. It opened the doorways for you to feel it's easy to just dump whoever is living with you if he doesn't meet your standards. But I want to start by emphasizing that if there are children involved, think about them. It's just like abortion, where you have a baby in your womb, a person, then you decide because of your own joy and happiness, you will abort. You kill your own child. You are a murderer. Not of an enemy, but of your own child, helpless child. Why? Because you're spoiling my chances of employment, spoiling my chances for marriage. You are being selfish. Abortion is a selfish thing. You are not thinking of the baby. And that's a person who could have ended up in life becoming somebody. Because that's the person alive. Then you kill them. Divorce has some similarity with that, where you do not think about the welfare of your children as much as your own welfare. So you just ignore them. Many children, studies upon studies, you can Google this subject up, have shown that they get very affected by the divorce of the parents. Studies show that if you go to a prison where there are young people, the majority of them will tell you they came from broken homes, broken marriages. It sounds, of course, in the breaking of the marriage, you never intended your children to end up in problems. But now the truth of the matter is what has happened is that your children have ended up not be growing the way God intended them to grow, and find it much easier to do a misdemeanor of one sort or the other, and finally they end up in prison. And these are studied subjects. It's not all people who end up in prison that came from broken marriages, but many, most, some studies show, are there. So by divorcing, you are predisposing your child to the possibility of life in prison. I do not understand fully why that happens, but I think I can only guess. Number one, if your children can see you are not disciplined, you left their father because you didn't like their father telling you what to do. You have no moral authority to stop them doing what they want. You say, you can't do that. But you even yourself, they will not tell you in words, but in their mind they are clear. You yourself are not disciplined. How would you be expecting me to be disciplined? And so it becomes very difficult to control your children because they think by divorcing, You are not disciplined. You are not willing to withstand. You are not willing to do something you don't enjoy. And yet you're asking them to be disciplined, to do something they are not liking. That may be the beginning of why they end up in prison. Not wanting to hear, not wanting to respect authority, not wanting to do what they are told. But they think you are the example of that. That's a guess. And maybe the other guess as to why they end up in prison is because the parents are competing for the attention of the children. So nobody can discipline. If you discipline the children too much, you say, I'll go to my father. Because you are not united in your parenting of the children, and you are seeking the favor of your children. Soon enough, they play games on you. So they are able to play the husband against the wife, the father against the mother. Once they learn how to manipulate at a very early age, they think you can manipulate society too, only to discover that that's not easy now in society. And they end up doing something that will make them go to prison. And that's a big possibility that you are no longer strictly applying the rules because you like their favor. The father, when they visit the father is also trying to be careful. It's just like grandparents are said to be very good parents. Why? After all, the children are only visiting, so the grandparents make them very happy. The children almost wish they were born by the grandparents. But the truth of the matter is because you are not with them all the time. You are not held responsible for their upbringing. It's the same thing with the children that are visiting their father for a weekend or for 3 days. He will behave such a fantastic thing until they want to keep coming. But in the process, he is making them think that to be loved means to be allowed to do whatever you want to do. And that could very easily lead them to a life that will take them to prison. So it can be that they don't respect you because of your divorce, or it can be that you yourself are living not in a way that allows them to operate. It's not that they are refusing. You just want to give them the leeway. But thirdly, the thing that would make children of divorced parents to end up in prison is that you don't have enough time for them. Even when you are two parents, you struggle to give children enough time. When you are now a single parent and having to even allocate time to the visiting parent, there is a question of how much attention you can give to your children, and so that they can grow disciplined, balanced lives. And that may be something that doesn't quite work as well. And so in the end, they end up in prison or being disposed towards prison. So before you divorce, please think about these possibilities. They don't happen in every case, but think about those possibilities. Early prison for people that have come from broken marriages. Early pregnancies also. Again, studies have shown many of the girls who end up pregnant as teenagers come from broken homes or maladjusted homes. Now, you need to understand, again, you don't see how they can end up seeing how things are. How would they not realize we need a properly thought out system before we can marry? You need to be able to pick your man. Now, they end up doing things that get them pregnant. Again, I can only guess why a girl like that will be there. I think the first thing is lack of love. Now that the father is not staying with the mother, they start craving love. And the first boy to show interest in the girl, he feels, wow, at least now I have somebody who loves me, somebody who cares. I can leave this broken home to a proper home. And in the process, she is unable to say no to sexual advances of the boy because he would never want to lose the boy. I'm willing to do anything to keep the boy. So what happens? They have sex, gets pregnant. What she was fearing finally happened. She's dumped. she becomes a single mother, just like her parent. And it all came from this lack of love. Just a thought. Could it be true? Maybe it is not in every case. But maybe the other thing that would lead you to early pregnancy is lack of protection. You are being left on your own too much by the parents. Some of them, they have to look for food, and they are looking after you alone. They are single parents, but in addition to that, they are also looking for love, and they have girlfriends or boyfriends, and they can't be done in your presence. They are trying to hide it from you, so they leave you on your own. They even give you money to silence you. That money is what will make you want to do things that are not right. For example, drink. And I believe alcohol is one of the most dangerous things for children, for young children, for teenagers. Why? It lowers your level of judgment. You are unable to judge properly. Therefore, chances that you end up having sex, even when your intention was not to, are very high the moment you start taking a little alcohol. Because, of course, you can never take much unless you take little. And children who are not in adult control will very easy, and you want to leave them so that you have time with your boyfriend or whatever, end up with the possibility of taking alcohol because of this indiscipline. And obviously, they end up becoming pregnant, and that becomes an issue. But thirdly is company, bad company. Your children, now that you are not in married couples where the children are of parents like that are together, who finally become friends of your children. And that is what may dispose them to early pregnancy. I'm not sure exactly why, but the studies are showing one of the possibilities is of after you separate with your husband, is your children could end up in early pregnancies or becoming sexually active at a very early age, whether you're a boy or a girl. And then studies show school dropouts. Many of them come from broken homes. Your children are unable to fulfill their life's dreams. Obviously, sometimes not in every case that is bad. Maybe the father disappeared and has nothing to do with the family, and he was the only breadwinner. So the children cannot have enough money to go to school. So they drop out of school. But it's really not that the mother is bad. She simply has no money. A lot of street children, if you go to check, you will discover they have very good fathers who abandoned them. That's how they ended up on the street. Because the mother was unable to have the kind to continue helping them to live in the standard that the father used to help them to live. But now they dumped that family and went and created another one. They have nothing to do with the children of that previous marriage. So the child ends up on the street and is likely to end up in the process dropping out of school. So the child is dropping out, number one, because of lack of finances, because the mother is unable to raise it. But they cannot drop out of school because their life is meaningless. When they look at their parents and think the kind of life they were living earlier, they feel so frustrated by the new life that they have nothing that can help them to maintain the desire to reach their goals. And in the process, school is not easy. So without proper motivation, it will not be possible for you to stay in it right up to the end. So school dropouts are a possibility for your child. But I'm also told that many people who don't wed but might cohabit, come with a kind of marriage, come from broken homes. You are so afraid that marriage cannot last. If I admire my father and mother, if they could not live together, I don't think there's any man who can. That kind of thought puts a thought in your mind that's not possible to have a marriage. So you don't want to commit. You are a man, but you don't want to commit. You're a woman, you don't want to commit. So you don't want a proper marriage. You want to stay with someone, cohabit with them, but at a slight provocation, leave them. And what is even more serious is many people who have divorced come from families that also divorced. That by divorcing, you are giving permission, even encouragement, kind of, to your children to also divorce later. My mother could not be held by my father. She was a tough woman. I'm also a tough woman like my mother. So many marriages that end up in divorce came from people like that. And I think that will be something that you need to ask yourself. Is that what you are? That the whole issue is that you fear marriage. You don't believe it can happen. And of course it's true, because if you really truly admire your parents, you think they are the best, you don't think you can even measure up to their standard, then you'll find it difficult to actually commit. But I think the other thing is, because you never saw marriage being practiced in your own home, it becomes difficult for you to know how to practice marriage. And in the process, you make your spouse feel dissatisfied. And may actually be the one who is not you who is going to initiate divorce. It is your spouse that will initiate divorce. But it all came from that you did not get to know exactly how to behave in a marriage. And in the process, or you learned bad habits. You saw what your mother was doing, and as a woman, you're also doing the same things. But those are the same things that caused your father to leave her. And it will also cause your husband to leave you. But you all learned it at home. And that could be the reason that you are actually divorcing. Or maybe that you now have moved in circles where divorce is fully accepted. And marriage itself is not easy. So it is hard work to stay in marriage, to enjoy your marriage. It's hard work. So, but once you are now in a circle of people who don't want that hard work, you will find yourself easily, very easily, ending up in divorce, because the options are easy and there are no sanctions against it. People even think you are clever and you are wise after you are divorced. So in the end, you understand what kind of problems you'll be. So I think that may partly explain why they are saying that the studies are saying that many of the people who end up cohabiting and not committing in marriage themselves came from marriages that were broken. And that can be a problem. And many of the people that end up divorcing come from the same home. But have you heard of this one? Street children are a product of broken marriages, but prostitutes, many prostitutes, are also product of many marriages. Again, you can only imagine what could cause children from such a home. I think some of the things we have been talking about: lack of discipline, lack of financial support that really push the child to want to fight, or even bad example, the mother keeps bringing different men to their homes, and in the process, she has thought men are commercial. After all, every time my mother is with somebody, we end up getting better food or a trip out or something. And she's not committed long term to the man. So in the end, you are kind of opening her to see that sex is an item she can trade in and make a lot of money out of it. she doesn't see it as anathema, something you can never even imagine. This is it's acceptable. That could be part of the problem. So it may be lack of money, but sometimes it's that you no longer have inhibitions against prostitution. It's the oldest trade they claim. And that can actually start giving you ideas. The whole issue about getting money out of men because you lost your husband will itself be going to your children. It doesn't matter what you tell them. Remember, we have been saying when we talked about parenting that habits are caught, not taught. Habits are caught, not. In other words, you can keep telling your children what's the right thing, what are the values, but if they can't see those values practiced by you, they will not do what you say. They are going to do what you do. They will not copy your words, they will copy your values, lived out values. And that could be the problem. So we can see clearly as we are discussing that when you divorce the father of your children, you actually may mean you don't like the children. Sometimes you stay in a marriage for the sake of your children, hoping that, of course, there will be a time the father can turn and become a reasonable guy. But in the process, remember, your children have no other father. They can never have another father. Any other father will be a foster father, like we see in Swahili, Baba Mukate, a provider, not a real father. And they know it, especially if they are beyond 4 or 5 years. They know it. This is not my father. The father also knows. And that can be quite a challenge in itself. So you need to be aware. This man you don't like is the only father your children can have. So you need to, number one, help them to respect the man. Number two, stay there for their sake. Stay with him for your sake. Except, like I've kept repeating, in the case of violence. We don't want you to be killed. But if it's just that you are not too happy in your marriage, please, for the sake of your children, think about how you can stay in it. But the one that I found most frightening was the one of sexual harassment by stepfathers. Sexual harassment by stepfathers. This man knows that this guy is not my relative at all. And maybe by the time you are marrying this man, she's actually a young teenage, 13, 14, and you have to allow them to be free because you are trying to teach the girl this is your new father. As you are trying to make her accept the new father, she thinks she is a father like she had. So she is also not putting boundaries. You also don't want to put boundaries. Why? You'd never want to think your new husband would claim you are suspecting him with a child. It would affect your own relationship with him. So you'd say nothing. Even if you can see that the relationship is becoming uncomfortably close with your teenage daughter, you don't say much because you don't want to affect the romance that is going. Having been hurt once, you don't want to be hurt again. So in the end, what happens? You end up finding your children sexually harassed by their stepfather. My friend, think twice before thinking that divorce is an option. And many, many marriages can be mended when there is commitment. So put a commitment. I know they say it takes two to tango, but you can sustain your marriage even if the other party is not putting anything into it. You can, for the sake of your children, you can sustain it and end up with a good marriage. So what are we saying? That the Word of God has told us no divorce, it's wrong. But I'm also saying socially or sociologically speaking, I think it's not a good thing. And you need to think twice. And you have spent time thinking about the impact on the children, the impact of divorce on children. And I think you need to consider it.